Welcome to the Hidden Corners, where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur, as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind.
Well, this is book 3 of the Wolfman Chronicles. It makes it part 37. And this is chapter 13 in the long-awaited werewolf wedding. We're in Yellowstone. We're in Yellowstone National Park in Montana. In the Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. Good place. The she-wolf speaks. Jack is trying so hard to be patient with me. He doesn't know how scared I am. I'm sure that if I become my former self, I'll be discovered. I can't let that happen. Besides, I've grown comfortable in this skin of the wolf. I'm not sure I could change back even if I wanted to. Well, it's a strange thing, being both human and animal. It is true that animals know only survival, or loyalty. If they have no master, their only concern is survival. But when an animal becomes tamed and relies on its master for food and shelter and love, then its only concern is for more of the same. More food, more love, more attention. We become so dependent on the one who feeds us that no matter how we are treated, we want more. Alex Smirnov could pass for any medical orderly in his white lab coat and soft-soled black shoes, stethoscope around his neck, and ID card conveniently tucked into his pocket, as if he was used to it getting in the way. He had played this role so many times in Russia that it was his second nature to him. His air of confidence and his professionalism as he strode through the hall towards Ivanovich's room caused not a single person to look up from their computer terminal. He received not even a passing glance from the nurses who passed him in the corridor. As far as anyone thought, he was just another visiting intern from some other hospital in some other town. American hospitals are so easy to navigate, he thought, as he quickly flashed his ID badge at the two officers who sat outside Ivanovich's room, in a state of sleep-deprived semi-consciousness. "I'll have someone bring the two of you coffee," he said as he stepped past the men into the private room where Ivanovich lay in a coma attached to life support. Smirnov took a quick, deep breath and inserted a hypodermic needle into Ivanovich's vein, and then pinched a small kink in the oxygen tube and quickly left the room, nodding to the officers as he left. It took several moments before the reduced oxygen affected the heart rate of the unresponsive man. It took a few more seconds before the monitors began beeping as the heart rate dropped significantly. Before the nurses could run to the room, Ivanovich was dead. Alex Smirnov exited the building and got into his rental car. He waited until he was back in his motel room before calling the boss. "It is done. Ivanovich is dead, although I doubt he would have regained consciousness anyway. The others are all dead as well. I'm the only one left here, and I haven't found Sasha yet. There's been no sign of her at the ranch. No, I have no idea why the FBI were there. It can't be because they knew we were coming. How could they? I have no explanation. But they are gone now. I watched them pack up and leave yesterday. I am going back out to the ranch this morning and confront Jack Moore. He is there, but Sasha does not appear to be with him. Yes, I also assume he knows where she is. I will get it out of him, one way or another. Yes, I know. I'll find her, and I will bring back the jewel." Smirnov ended the call and poured himself a glass of vodka. It didn't matter that it was barely 9 a.m. He was on edge, and the vodka helped him to relax. Simeon Mogolovich, the boss, was not pleased. He had spared no expense to secure the helicopter and send 12 of his best men to the ranch in Montana to capture or kill Sasha and bring back the stolen jewels. The fact that the FBI were there to interfere baffled him. How could they have known his men would be there? They couldn't have known, so it must have been just a coincidence. In his line of work, Mogolovich hated coincidence. He didn't build the largest multi-billion-dollar international criminal empire by letting coincidences like this occur. The FBI had called him the most powerful and dangerous gangster in the world, with power that reaches a global scale and connections to prominent government, military, and law enforcement officials, as well as powerful politicians around the world. He's not a man who makes mistakes. Mogilevich had made his first significant fortune from scamming fellow Soviet Jews eager to emigrate to Israel, the country where Mogilevich was living at the time. He earned a considerable amount of money as an intermediary selling jewelry and artwork belonging to Jews who had immigrated from Kiev in the 1980s. He made deals to purchase their assets with the promise to sell them at a fair market value and forward the proceeds to them. Instead, he simply sold the assets and pocketed the proceeds. As a result of this, he served 2 terms in prison for a total of 7 years. But Mogilevich had also been the key money laundering contact for one of the largest criminal organizations within Russia, investing in armament factories and gaining control of one of the largest private banks in Russia, gaining direct access to the world financial system and influencing the outcome of global stock exchange. The United States has refreshed its efforts to apprehend Mogilevich, who's currently living in Moscow. The State Department's Transnational Organized Crime Rewards Program now offers a reward of up to $5 million for information leading to the arrest and/or conviction of Mogilevich. That is why the risk of Ivanovich waking up from his coma could not be risked. But Mogilevich wanted the stolen jewels and would go to any length to have it returned. He had hired Peter, Sasha's husband, to take it from the Kremlin armory in Moscow in an armored truck, posing as a guard. The stolen jewel was the world-famous Orlov diamond. Found in the 17th century in Golconda, India, the Orlov diamond weighed nearly 190 carats. It was first owned by the great Mughals, but in the middle of the 18th century, Persian ruler Nadir Shah captured Delhi and took the stone. It was then embedded in the eye of the Raghunatha deity statue in a Hindu shrine, but it was stolen by a French soldier who had converted to Hinduism to carry out the heist. Wow, what a story. It was bought by Grigory Orlov in an attempt to rekindle his dwindling romance with Catherine the Great. Unfortunately, she had already begun a romance with Grigory Potemkin, who accepted the jewel nonetheless and became the jewel head of the imperial scepter in 1774. No one knew for sure where Peter had hidden the royal gem, but with his sudden death and the disappearance of Sasha, all signs pointed towards her. She had not been easy to find. Mogilevich's men had searched all over Norway and Finland, and her brother wouldn't tell them where she was, no matter how hard they pressed him. And then, through a lucky turn of events, she was spotted in New York City, at an apartment with a friend of hers named Natalia. When his men arrived there, they found Natalia and her boyfriend dead in the apartment, but no sign of Sasha. Knowing she was in the United States, they assumed that she'd be on her way to meet her boyfriend, Jack Moore, a man they knew she'd been recently seen with in Russia. Now, it wasn't difficult to find out where he lived. It was all on public records. Russian scouts had seen Jack at the ranch, so they decided to literally descend upon the property and just take it by force, because that's what they were good at. Now, they certainly weren't expecting to find FBI agents on the property or the ensuing gun battle. Now, 11 of his men were dead, and the only one left alive, Alex Smirnov, claimed that he hasn't seen any sign of Sasha at the ranch. Mogilevich angrily threw his glass of vodka across the room, narrowly missing his original painting by Marc Chagall, I in the Village. The stone was his obsession for the moment, and Mogilevich would not rest until it was in his hands. Yellowstone has a beauty and a uniqueness unlike any other national park in this country, but the grandeur of the Tetons is second to none. Only miles from each other, the two national parks almost seem as one, with the John D. Rockefeller Jr. Memorial Parkway linking the two together. Herds of elk wander through lush meadows of wildflowers with the majestic peaks looming above. Moose stop to drink at the rivers. It's really breathtaking. Stop the car, Juanita. This is the place right here. This meadow, this river, this lake Catherine's eyes filled with tears. She took Usko's hand. "Have you ever seen any place more beautiful and wild than this?" Usko smiled. He loved seeing the excitement in Kat's eyes. He thought about the steppes of his homeland, the mountains of Russia, the beauty of Lake Baikal. No, they could not compare to the beauty of the Tetons. "Well, let's call Jack and tell him we've found the exact place where we want the wedding. He'll be happy to hear I've picked Jenny Lake. We used to come here with our parents when we were kids." Miguel and Julian had already driven away in Miguel's rented pickup. Jack put the wolf and the 2 dogs in the cab of his truck, went back to the house for his overnight bag. They were going to meet and spend the night at Jenny Lake. The resort had operated since the 20s when Tony Grace opened up a dude ranch at that site. Well, Jack and Catherine had spent many summers on the lake, kayaking and attending summer camp. They both had fond memories of those days, and it seemed just a perfect place for them to make amends. Walking back to his truck, he noticed a car driving up his long driveway. Dust billowed behind the vehicle, indicating that whatever and whoever it was in a hurry. Jack pulled his gun from the holster inside the cab and placed it in his pocket out of sight. The man walking towards him, however, was holding a Glock 17 at his side. Jack felt the hair bristling on his neck. "May I help you?" Jack inquired, hesitating on the word help. Inside the cab, the dogs were still barking, and he could hear Sasha growling. "I am looking for someone. A woman," the man replied. "Perhaps you have seen her. Blonde, long hair, very pretty." "Well, I'm sure I haven't, but if I do, I'd certainly notice her," Jack replied sarcastically. He reached for his door handle as if he intended to climb in, as if this was a normal occurrence for someone to stop by his ranch looking for a beautiful woman. "Stop," the Russian said, moving closer to the truck. Jack hushed the dogs. They cowered in the back seat while Sasha remained in the front passenger seat, growling at the man. The truck door was open. She could easily jump out and spring at the man if she needed to. "Well, I don't know what you're looking for, but you're trespassing on my land. I think you'd best turn around and leave. Now." Jack could feel the fangs beginning to form in his own mouth. It wouldn't take long for the beast to be unleashed. "You know who I'm looking for, Jack Moore. I'm looking for your girlfriend, Sasha. Perhaps you have seen her?" His English was good, but he still had a strong Russian accent. As he took another step towards the truck, Sasha drew back her lips and snarled at him, her lips quivering as she lowered her ears and showed her fangs. "No, I've not seen her. What do you want with Sasha?" Jack asked the man. "I think you know where she is. I think you know where she is hiding." "I haven't seen her since I left Russia. What makes you think she's here?" Jack could hear Sasha growling in a low snarl. "She was last seen in New York. We know she's traveling under assumed name, and we also know she flew to Bozeman, rented a taxi, and was dropped off not far from your ranch. You must be hiding her, and I want to know where she is. Look, man, there is no one here except me and my dogs. I haven't seen Sasha since I was in Russia. Now I have an appointment I need to get to, and you need to get off my property." The man started to take a step closer, then stopped, glancing at the snarling beast beside Jack, looking as if she'd like to spring from that truck any moment and come after him. "If you see that woman, you tell her that she has something we are looking for, and we won't stop until we have it. If she wants peace, she needs to see that it is returned to its rightful owner. We don't care if she's dead or she's alive. We just want what she has taken." With that, he turned, walked back towards his car. Jack watched until the car was out of sight. Looking at Sasha in the seat beside him, he started the engine. "You have a lot of explaining to do." Jack shook his head in disbelief. "I want to know when you're going to tell me what's going on, and what is this thing that he's referring to?" Sasha just lowered her head and looked away from Jack. As they were nearing the end of Jack's property boundary, Sasha began barking and jumping at the window. Jack stopped the truck and opened the door. She jumped out and ran towards the forest that surrounded the side of Jack's property. He watched her run and wondered if she'd return. He waited for what seemed like several minutes, then sighed and started to get back into the truck. Finally, he saw her appear at the far edge of the tree line. She bounded in the truck and sprung up into the cab, holding a small bag with her teeth. She dropped it into Jack's lap. "Well, what is this?" he asked as he untied the tight knot that bound the pouch-shaped bag. Inside was another small pouch, delicately and intricately embroidered and tied with another tight knot. He dumped the contents of the bag into his palm, and behold, the largest diamond he had ever seen. He looked at Sasha's face, her eyes staring back at him. "So this is what they're looking for," he sighed. After several miles of silence, Jack finally spoke. "We're going to have to stop and pick up some clothes for you. I'm really hoping you're able to come out of your wolf body, Sasha. Maybe you can't. I know that happened to Spencer and Rebecca. They got to the point where they just couldn't transform any longer. Now they're stuck in their wolf bodies, and I don't think they even remember what it was like to be human. Sasha, I don't want that to happen to you. I'm asking you to try, please." He looked at her sad eyes and wondered if he'd ever see her as a woman again. Well, Catherine and Juanita were in Jackson Hole picking out a wedding dress. Jack needed to do some shopping as well, with the hope that Sasha might be able to make an appearance. He agreed to meet them at the Cowboy Coffee Shop downtown. Jack left the dogs in the truck and wandered into the coffee shop. The girl behind the counter handed Jack his coffee, and he turned to head to the table where Cat and Juanita were waiting for him, deep in conversation. At the next table sat a very old Native American with a feather tied in his long gray hair. Across from him sat a young teenage boy, probably his grandson, Jack thought, as he tipped his head toward the older man in greeting. As their eyes met, the old man's gaze seemed to hold Jack's for just longer than a customary greeting. It was as if there was a look of recognition, Jack thought, as he reached over and gave Cat a hug. "Showing a baby bump yet?" he teased as he sat down, relieved that she didn't seem even a bit angry at him for being so abrupt with her at the ranch. "I wish I could show you the dress, but you just have to wait until tomorrow. Everything's set, except we can't find anyone to officiate the wedding. Everyone around here is already booked. We've been calling around all morning," Catherine said, excited as she finished the last of her herbal tea off. Juanita chimed in. "I've been trying to talk her into having Julian or Miguel do it. You know, it doesn't have to be official yet, but your sister's just like you, Jack, stubborn and unreasonable." Well, Jack laughed at that. "I don't know what to tell you, Cat. Don't you have to be licensed or something?" "No, you can just go to the courthouse and get a one-day pass," she laughed. "Seriously, anyone can perform a marriage if they get a permit first." Jack took a gulp of his hot coffee. "I need to do some shopping, so I'll meet you back at the restaurant this evening. Have you heard from Miguel and Julian yet?" "Yeah, they're helping Usko pick out a suit. We'll see you later." She stood and kissed Jack on the cheek. Juanita gave him a hug, and he watched the two women walk out of the coffee shop. The old grandfather reached over and put his hand on Jack's arm. "I wonder if I might have a word with you," he asked, as he stood and put his cowboy hat back on his head. Jack nodded and followed him outside to a sunny bench. He sat down beside him and waited several minutes for the man to speak. The man's grandson asked if he could pet the dogs in Jack's truck. Jack nodded his head. He wasn't worried about them biting the boy, but if anyone else had put their arm in the truck, there's no telling what might have happened. Finally, the grandfather spoke. "My name is Joseph Red Hawk, and that is my grandson over there, petting your dogs. His name is Joseph Two Ravens. We have the same first name, so I call him Joe, and he calls me grandfather." He laughed, as if he'd made a very funny joke. "My grandson is good to me, and I try to teach him the old ways." There is an old Cherokee legend about a grandfather teaching his grandson about life. I would like to tell you that story, the old man continued. "A fight is going on inside me," the grandfather told the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego." He continued, "The other is good. He is joy, he is peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute, and then he asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" "The one you feed," is the answer. The old man paused and looked in Jack's eyes. "You have fed the good wolf." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small stone with a picture of a wolf's head drawn on it. "I wish for you to have this. I am honored to be in your presence." He placed the stone in the palm of Jack's hand. "Well, thank you," Jack replied, not sure what else to say. The old man turned toward his grandson and nodded his head to leave. Jack started to walk back to his truck, then turned and addressed the old man. "Joseph Redhawk," he called out. The old man turned to look at Jack. "How would you like to officiate at my sister's wedding tomorrow?" The old man grinned from ear to ear. "I would be most honored," he smiled. "Where's that courthouse?" The morning sun was just coming over the tips of the mountains. The air was crisp, but the cup of coffee warmed Jack's hands as he walked down the path from the cabin to the edge of the lake. He was thinking about his mother and his father and how much they would have liked to be here on Catherine's special day. The water was like glass, peaceful and quiet. Fish were surfacing, creating circles in the still water. Something caught his eye on the opposite shore, and he watched a moose tenderly step towards the water's edge and dip its long nose into the water to get a good drink. He had not felt so much peace in a very long time. The dogs had slept on the floor at the foot of the bed. He had hoped to wake and find Sasha asleep beside him, but it hadn't happened. He was worried that she'd been out of her body too long, but now she wouldn't be able to change back. He had hung the dress he bought for her in the room just in case. Either way, human or wolf, he was glad to have her back in his life. He thought about the jewel in the bag. He was sure that there was a good explanation why Sasha had it. He couldn't imagine Pater giving it to her, though. He vaguely remembered reading about the theft in the papers shortly before he'd gone to Russia. Did she have it with her the entire time, safeguarding it for Pater? Or had she found it after he was dead? Was the reason she killed him to gain possession of a jewel that rare and valuable? So many questions, and no opportunities for answers. He walked slowly back to his cabin, breathing in the cool morning air. It calmed him. It felt good. He opened the door and looked at the wolf lying on the bed. "I'm leaving you some breakfast. The dress is hanging on the bathroom. If you can't wear it, I understand." He ruffled the fur between her ears and smiled. He placed their plates of breakfast on the floor and left to find the others. Joseph Redhawk and his grandson arrived as everyone was eating breakfast at the lodge. He was dressed in Western clothing, but his long gray hair was braided with a red tail hawk feather. His grandson's long black braids had 2 raven feathers attached with red beads. Jack rose from his seat and shook their hands. "We're so glad to have you with us here today." Jack noticed the old man had a beaded breastplate that was very ornate and obviously very old. The old man smiled and shook everyone's hands. "I am honored to be here." "Tell us about yourself," Catherine asked. "Where do you live?" "My grandson and I live on the Wind River Reservation. We are from the Eastern Shoshone tribe. We are here to honor the memory of the boy's mother on Mother's Day. It could have been a sad day for us, but you have made it a happy one." He placed both hands over Catherine's and gazed deeply into her eyes. "You are like your brother. You have the wolf in you." He gazed at the others sitting at the table. "You are all wolves," he exclaimed excitedly. "Well, except you, my dear," he gazed upon Juanita. "You are something else entirely." Julian laughed. "You got that right." After breakfast, everyone retreated to their cabins to get dressed before walking out to the meadow where the ceremony would take place. Jack tied ribbons around the 2 Australian shepherds' necks and then one around Sasha's with a flower attached. He held her face in his hands. "I'm happy to have you here with us, Sasha, even if you can't wear the dress." He bent down and he kissed her on the top of her nose. "I'll be back in just a bit. You all stay here for just a bit longer." Jack left the cabin to carry the flowers and the few folding chairs out to the meadow. Joseph Red Hawk and his grandson were already at the spot, smudging the area with a smoking bundle of sage, tobacco, and cedar, and chanting a blessing song. The grandson had picked up wild iris and dandelions and was scattering them in a circle where the bride and the groom would stand. Jack felt the small wolf stone in the pocket of his vest. Joseph Red Hawk walked over and stood in front of Jack, holding an abalone shell in his left hand while he waved an eagle feather through the smoke, guiding it towards Jack. He whispered the words, "Shaunka Mantua Tonka." It's "You are the wolf. With the smoke of this sacred fire, you are cleansed from this day forward, and you will walk in the protection of the Great Spirit. May it ease your burden." He turned and continued preparing the site for the ceremony. It was time. Miguel, Usco, and Juanita walked out to the ceremony site. Julian stayed behind to walk his daughter through the meadow. "Give me a moment," Jack said as he realized that he needed to get the dogs. He began to run back to the cabin, but coming up the path beside the lake was Sasha, looking as beautiful as Jack remembered her. She was wearing the dress he had bought for her, and at her side were the two Aussies. She had tears in her eyes as she smiled at him. Jack rushed to her side and threw his arms around her in a passionate embrace. He had his Sasha back. Joseph Red Hawk began the ceremony. "O Great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the winds, and whose breath gives life to all the world, hear me. Bless these two before me in their union. Bless them with your strength and your wisdom. May they walk in beauty, and may their eyes ever hold the red and purple sunset. May their hands respect the things you have made, and their ears sharp to hear your voice. May they learn the lessons you have hidden in every leaf and rock. Help them remain calm and strong in the face of all that comes toward them. Creator, giver of all life, bless with your goodness Catherine and Usco, who come now to join you in marriage. Grant that they give their sacred word to each other in the strength of your love. Enable them to grow in love and peace with you and with one another for all their days. Great Spirit, bring the blessings of the east, the spirit of Mother Hawk. Bring the blessings of the south, the spirit of the coyote. Bring the blessings of the west, the spirit of the wolf. Bring the blessings of the north, the spirit of the white buffalo. Bring the blessings of Mother Earth and Father Sky and Creator of our souls within. May these two be washed clean by the smoke of these fragrant plants, and may that same smoke carry our prayers spiraling to the heavens. Let this couple be filled with love and light from this day forward. Aho, amen. And with that, Catherine and Usco were married. Now that night, as everyone sat around the campfire toasting the events of the day, Joseph Red Hawk told stories of his youth, while his grandson leaned against a log with his arms wrapped around the two dogs. It was not the right time to press Sasha into talking. That would come later. Tonight was for magic and stories and watching the stars shoot across the sky.